Nobody saw death coming. John joked with Henry Winkler that morning, keeping everyone's spirits high. But around 3 p.m., something changed. He looked exhausted, pale, and kept sweating. The crew watched him struggle through scenes. When he finally collapsed at 4 p.m., chaos erupted. They rushed him to Providence St. Joseph Medical Center. In a chilling twist, it was the same hospital where he'd been born. The doctors misdiagnosed him. What happened next was really heartbreaking. John Ritter was born on September 17, 1948, at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, California. Strangely enough, that same hospital would become the place where his life ended 54 years later. He was born into showbiz royalty. His father, Tex Ritter, was a country music legend and movie star. His mother, Dorothy Faye, acted in westerns too. They lived in a plush home in Toluca Lake, where John and his older brother Tom grew up surrounded by the industry. Tom had cerebral palsy, and John was always aware of his brother's challenges. While Tex hoped John might go into law, he supported him when he chose acting. And in a beautiful twist of fate, one of John's first major roles was on The Waltons, his father's favorite show. It was during the filming of that show in January 1974 that John got the call that his father had died. It was just a day after New Year's. He was playing a preacher on screen, but inside, he was a grieving son. He insisted on finishing his scenes that day. That loss would shape the emotional honesty he brought to all his future roles. But even earlier, life had already dealt him a tough blow. As a teenager, John was riding in a car when something flew through the window and struck his right eye. It left him with permanent damage. He lost central vision in that eye. Only his peripheral vision remained. He never talked much about it, but it affected him every day. And yet, on screen, you'd never notice. He adjusted his timing, movement, and expressions to compensate. When Don Knotts later called him the greatest physical comedian on the planet, it meant even more knowing what he was working against. Every pratfall on Three's Company, every bit of slapstick, he was doing all of it with limited vision. That hidden injury only made his skill more impressive. Oddly enough, John didn't start out wanting to be an actor. At Hollywood High School, he was student body president and voted most popular. He wanted to be a politician. He went to USC, majoring in psychology and minoring in architecture. But then, he took an acting class taught by Nina Foch. It changed everything. He switched his major to theater and earned a BFA in drama. He didn't stop there. He studied under the legendary Stella Adler and joined the Harvey Lembeck Comedy Workshop. He even toured Europe doing stage plays in England, Scotland, Holland, and Germany, all while his dad was entertaining American troops in Germany. The parallels were uncanny. But before all of that, before college, before the acting classes, there was a silly game show. In 1966, at just 18 years old, John went on The Dating Game. He wasn't famous yet. He wasn't even in drama school. But he was charming and funny, and he won. The prize? A vacation to Lake Havasu, Arizona. It was his first time on TV, and it clearly left a mark. Soon after, he enrolled at USC and found his way into that life-changing acting class. That game show might have seemed small at the time, but it was the beginning of a television journey that would touch millions. John's early acting career was all about smart moves and steady growth. He made his TV debut in 1970 on Dan August, playing a student protester. That show starred Burt Reynolds and Norman Fell, who would later become Mr. Roper on Three's Company. It was a small world, and John was already standing out. He soon landed recurring roles like Reverend Fordwick on The Waltons, and he kept popping up on big shows. MASH, The Bob Newhart Show, Medical Center, Kojak, The Streets of San Francisco. Every part showed a different side of him. He was funny, serious, dramatic, whatever the role called for, he delivered. And then came The Mary Tyler Moore Show. That one was big. He played a minister again, but this time on a comedy show that defined the era. By then, producers and casting agents had taken notice. John wasn't just getting lucky. He was proving his range. One of the most heartbreaking moments in his early career came in 1974 while filming The Waltons. His dad had just passed away, and John was mid-shoot. He was grieving, but he kept filming. The director offered to stop production, but John said no. His father always told him the show must go on. That day, John acted through real pain, and it made his performance even more powerful. The cast rallied around him, especially Richard Thomas, who played John Boy. That experience shaped how John worked from then on, with deep emotion and fierce professionalism. As his television work grew, John also made his way into film. In 1976, he appeared in Nickelodeon alongside Ryan O'Neal and Burt Reynolds. He was already auditioning for Three's Company while filming that movie. In 1977, he worked with Jenny Sullivan in Breakfast in Bed. And in 1979, he played President Chet Roosevelt in the political satire Americathon. Around the same time, he began co-hosting the United Cerebral Palsy Telethon with his brother Tom, a commitment that lasted 15 years. It meant the world to him, and it showed that fame hadn't changed his priorities. He kept doing both, film and TV, and few actors managed to balance both worlds so gracefully. When ABC decided to make Three's Company, John had to fight for the role of Jack Tripper. More than 50 actors auditioned, including Billy Crystal. The network almost gave it to someone else, thinking John's version of the character was too effeminate. They even considered replacing him, but Fred Silverman at ABC believed in him. He saw what others didn't, that John's physical comedy and timing were unmatched. He stayed in the role, and test audiences loved him. That decision changed television history. John had studied physical comedy by watching Dick Van Dyke and Chevy Chase. He learned how to move, fall, stumble, and make it funny. And that's what made Jack Tripper unforgettable. But Three's Company almost never made it to air. The first pilot was a flop. ABC hated it. They kept Joyce DeWitt as Janet, but replaced the actress playing Chrissy with Susan Lanier. That second version was better, but still didn't work. Just one day before filming was set to begin, Fred Silverman was reviewing audition tapes again. He saw Suzanne Summers' audition and recognized her from The Tonight Show. She hadn't even been seriously considered before. Ironically, she had just survived a terrifying near crash on a flight and was about to quit acting. But she went to the audition anyway. Her relaxed, carefree vibe was exactly what the show needed. Silverman made a last-minute call to cast her, and filming began the next day. When Three's Company premiered in March 1977, it raised eyebrows across America. The show centered on Jack Tripper, a straight man pretending to be gay, just so he could live with two single women in the same apartment. It was a simple setup, but at the time, that idea was outrageous. Networks didn't know whether to laugh or panic. The landlord in the show was an old-school prude, and the only way Jack could stay under that roof was to act like the harmless gay roommate. It played into stereotypes, and today, the humor feels uncomfortable. Critics pointed out how most of the jokes were built on fear. Fear that Jack might actually be gay. Mr. Roper, played by Norman Fell, made awkward jokes that felt stiff, even then. Don Knotts came later as Mr. Furley, who many thought was secretly gay himself, but the show never said it out loud. Still, for all its flaws, the series leaned more into silliness than cruelty. And oddly enough, the very thing that scared the networks made the show stand out. Audiences couldn't look away. It was bold. It was different. And it came right as American society was shifting its views on sex, identity, and relationships. But things weren't peaceful behind the scenes. By season 5 in 1980, Suzanne Summers, who played the bubbly blonde Chrissy Snow, wasn't happy with her paycheck. She earned $30,000 per episode and wanted $150,000, the same as John Ritter. She also wanted 10% of the show's profits. ABC offered her just $5,000 more. That's when everything broke down. The network's solution was strange. Summers would still appear in episodes, but only for a few seconds. She filmed short scenes alone, pretending to call her roommates from her mother's home in Fresno. She didn't share a set with her co-stars anymore. Ritter and Joyce DeWitt were handed special colored scripts, so they'd know when to avoid crossing paths with her. It got personal. Ritter was hurt that she went public with the dispute. DeWitt didn't speak to Summers for over 30 years. The friendship was gone. Summers and Ritter only reconciled just before his death in 2003. But despite the chaos, Ritter's talent couldn't be denied. He had already been nominated for Emmys in 1978 and 1981, and Golden Globes in 1979 and 1980. But it was in 1984, during the show's final season, that he finally won both. He took home the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy and the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a TV comedy or musical. By then, he had become a household name. That same year, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. His father, country singer Tex Ritter, had a star too, making them the first father-son duo with stars in different categories. ABC wasn't ready to let go of Jack Tripper, so in 1984, they launched a spin-off called Three's a Crowd. Jack now lived with his girlfriend Vicky, and her disapproving father was always in the way. But the show flopped. It only ran for 22 episodes. What made fans furious was how it erased the past. There was no mention of Chrissy, Janet, Terry, or even the landlords. Only Jack's buddy Larry made a brief appearance. Critics slammed it. Each episode felt like the same recycled argument between Jack and his girlfriend's dad. Ritter demanded a full season if the network wanted more. ABC only offered half. He walked away. Years later, Entertainment Weekly called it a textbook example of how to kill a hit show. While all this was happening, Ritter tried something unexpected. In 1982, he lent his voice to an animated film called The Flight of Dragons. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it quietly gained a following through TV reruns and HBO. Ritter played Peter Dickinson, a man who transforms into a dragon. He recorded the intense transformation scene in a single take. His voice shifted slowly from human to beast. Live without breaks. It was a performance that animation fans still talk about. One director even said it had the same emotional weight Robin Williams brought to Aladdin a decade later. By 1987, Ritter returned to TV with Hooperman, a half-hour show that mixed comedy with real drama. Critics didn't know what to call it, so they coined a new word, dramedy. Ritter played Harry Hooperman, a cop who inherits an apartment building and a moody Jack Russell Terrier. The show was ahead of its time. It used a single-camera format, something shows like The Office and Modern Family would later popularize. Guest stars included Don Cheadle and Mark Hamill. Ritter's performance earned him another round of Emmy and Golden Globe nominations. He also won a People's Choice Award. ABC would later admit canceling Hooperman was a mistake. Viewers loved it, just not fast enough. After Three's Company, Ritter never stopped working, but he had one big obstacle. People couldn't forget Jack Tripper. They expected him to always fall over furniture and play the clown. Ritter knew he had to break the mold. In 1989, he starred in Skin Deep as a depressed writer spiraling into self-destruction. It was funny, but dark. The shift was bold. John Ritter's career took a surprising turn in 1990. He stepped away from the goofy charm of Three's Company and into the chaotic world of Problem Child. Ritter played Ben Healy, a sweet man who adopts a boy named Junior, who turns out to be an absolute terror. What most people don't know is that the movie was based on a true story. A Los Angeles Times article described a boy so disturbed, even animals were afraid of him. The script was originally meant to be a dark, adult satire, but Universal turned it into a kids' comedy. Critics hated it. Still, audiences showed up. The film made $72.2 million worldwide on just an $11 million budget. Ritter's soft-spoken monologue, promising to love Junior no matter how bad he got, stuck with audiences. It was enough to greenlight Problem Child 2 the very next year. Ritter returned, and the franchise exploded. There was a third film without him, an animated series, and even a Turkish remake called Zübçüktü in 1995. In 1992, Ritter kept the momentum going. He starred in two very different comedies. First was Noises Off, a chaotic movie about a theater group falling apart behind the scenes. The cast was packed with stars: Michael Caine, Carol Burnett, Christopher Reeve. Ritter played a bumbling actor caught in the madness. The movie only made $2 million on a $12 million budget, but it grew a cult following. One reviewer said it showed Ritter at his funniest, without going too far. That same year, he switched gears again in Stay Tuned. He played a couch potato who ends up inside a twisted TV universe after making a deal with the devil. His real-life charm helped sell the absurd comedy. He even slipped back into his old Three's Company character for a few moments. Salt and Pepper appeared in the final scene, which took place inside one of their music videos. The film didn't do well at the box office, but critics praised Ritter's perfect timing and energy. Then came Sling Blade in 1996. This was nothing like the rest. Ritter played Vaughn Cunningham, a soft-spoken gay manager of a dollar store in a small southern town. It was a quiet role, completely different from his past. The movie was written and directed by Billy Bob Thornton, who had worked with Ritter on Hearts Afire. Their friendship helped Ritter land the part, but it wasn't easy. Changing his look for the role caused tension on set. He even argued over how his hair should be styled. But when the cameras rolled, he transformed. In one scene, Ritter didn't speak or move. He just stood there, and Thornton kept the shot. It was that powerful. The film won an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay and changed how casting directors saw Ritter. He wasn't just a comedy guy anymore, but television still had a place for him. Back in 1992, Ritter had launched Hearts Afire, a political sitcom on CBS. He played John Hartman, a conservative aide who falls for a liberal journalist, played by Marky Post. The show had smart writing and even featured Billy Bob Thornton in a supporting role. But after season 1, the network forced changes. They moved the setting from Washington, D.C. to a small southern town. Ritter's character went from political insider to newspaper owner. The shift didn't work. Ratings dropped from over 20 million to just around 10 million by season 3. The show ended in 1995 with one episode left unaired. Its original theme song was by Earth, Wind and Fire, fitting for a show about passion and friction. Then, in 1998, Ritter made a surprising appearance on Ally McBeal. He played George Madison, a sweet, emotional character who showed up in 2 episodes. It was a short role, but unforgettable. Ritter blended comedy and heartbreak in a way that earned him an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Guest Actor. He didn't win, but the nod put him in the same league as Woody Harrelson and William Shatner. It reminded everyone just how good he really was. By 2000, he was doing something totally different: voice acting. He became the voice of Clifford, the Big Red Dog. The PBS cartoon introduced him to a brand new audience, kids who had no idea he was ever on a sitcom. His gentle voice brought the character to life for over 60 episodes and a feature film. Ritter earned 4 Daytime Emmy nominations in a row for the role. John Ritter married actress Nancy Morgan on October 16, 1977. For almost 20 years, they built a life together and had 3 children: Jason, born in 1980, Carly in 1982, and Tyler a few years later. They weren't just a family at home. In 1990, the 3 of them acted together in a TV movie called The Dreamer of Oz. It was young Jason's first acting role. To the outside world, they looked like a happy Hollywood family. But behind closed doors, things weren't as perfect. They separated in 1993 and made it official with a divorce in 1996. Still, they stayed close, co-parenting their children without bitterness. Nancy also had her own career, starring in films like Grand Theft Auto and working with Italian actor Terence Hill. While John was still married to Nancy, he met Amy Yazbek in 1990 during a script read for the comedy Problem Child. It was an instant connection. Even though his marriage was falling apart, this new friendship started to grow. They kept working together, first in Problem Child 2, then in a 1991 episode of The Cosby Show, where Amy played John's pregnant wife. The timing of their on-screen stories felt oddly close to real life. In 1996, just as John's divorce was finalized, he appeared on Amy's sitcom Wings, playing her estranged husband. Eventually, the working relationship turned romantic, and they fell in love for real. On September 18, 1999, John and Amy got married at the Murphy Theater in Wilmington, Ohio. That location wasn't random. The theater was built by Amy's great-great-great-uncle, Charles Webb Murphy, who once owned the Chicago Cubs. The wedding happened just over a year after their child was born, on September 11, 1998. That child, born as Stella, later transitioned and became Noah Lee Ritter at the age of 18. On Noah's 5th birthday, September 11, 2003, John died, leaving behind a mix of joy and heartbreak that would forever be tied to that date. John was deeply involved with the United Cerebral Palsy Foundation. His older brother, Tom Ritter, had cerebral palsy, and John never treated him as fragile. He once said he thought his parents coddled Tom too much. John believed in pushing his brother to be strong. He taught him to play wiffle ball and encouraged him to get up every time he fell. That belief paid off. Tom went on to graduate law school, while John became an actor. In the 1980s, Tom was a TV producer and appeared in UCP's telethon alongside comedian Jerry Jewell. John later hosted that same telethon, and one weekend alone raised over $17 million for the cause. The irony wasn't lost. John had once played a president in the 1979 film Americathon, organizing a giant telethon to save America. In real life, he was doing something quite similar. John's children grew up around cameras, but he never pushed them. He guided, supported, and expected them to work hard. Jason, his oldest, started acting with his dad at just 10 years old. As of 2025, he has over 100 roles under his belt and even earned an Emmy nomination for Parenthood. Tyler also became an actor. Carly followed a different path, into music, inspired by their grandfather Tex Ritter. And Noah, the youngest, stayed out of the spotlight for the most part. Each child found their own way, but always carried a piece of their father's spirit. September 11th, 2003, began like any normal day on the set of 8 Simple Rules. John was filming the 2nd season. Henry Winkler had arrived as a guest star and remembered John joking and keeping spirits high. Around midday, the two had their last chat. John looked a bit off, sweaty, tired, but still managed to smile. That afternoon, he pulled Kaylee Cuoco aside, sat her down, and said, "I want you to know, I love you." She said it back. "That's it," he replied, and gave her a hug. No one knew that was goodbye. During a rehearsal around 3 p.m., John started feeling worse. He was sweating more, nauseated, and said his chest felt tight. The director, Robbie Benson, had asked him to do a funny physical scene, run across a room and jump over a bed. But John was struggling. His breathing was heavy. Benson, sensing something was wrong, toned the scene down. John thanked him, and they hugged. What no one realized was that John wasn't having a typical heart attack. He was suffering from an aortic dissection, a tear in the wall of the largest artery in the body. It's rare, dangerous, and hard to spot. By 4 p.m., things had gotten worse. John was in visible pain. Crew members panicked. Kaylee Cuoco later said she heard screaming and saw chaos. Just 6 days before his 55th birthday, John was collapsing in front of everyone. On top of everything, it was Noah's 5th birthday. What should have been a joyful day became something none of them would forget. They rushed him to Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank. It was only a few minutes away, and in a strange twist of fate, it was the same hospital where John had been born on September 17th, 1948. He was still awake when they arrived around 5 p.m. He was vomiting, in pain, and kept talking about the tightness in his chest. Doctors ran an EKG, but it didn't show anything clear. They thought it was a heart attack. Around 6 p.m., John's condition worsened. His blood pressure dropped. His lungs started filling with fluid. His heart raced. The doctors followed the heart attack protocol. They gave him blood thinners and inserted a balloon pump. But those were the wrong treatments for what was really happening. A Yale heart surgeon later said, "The very things used to save him may have made it worse." A simple chest X-ray might have shown the tear, but no one ordered it. By 7 p.m., doctors ran another EKG. It looked worse. They rushed John into surgery, but it was too late. The damage was done. On the night of September 11, 2003, John Ritter died. He was 54. ABC had already completed 3 episodes, But now the show had no lead actor. The cast and crew were heartbroken. Behind the scenes, Disney and ABC executives were facing tough choices, both emotional and business ones. Not long after Ritter's funeral, high-level talks began. Disney's CEO, Michael Eisner, quickly came up with an idea. He suggested that Katie Saigel's character, Kate, should be written as pregnant. His plan was to have the baby born during May sweeps, boosting ratings. But the reaction was fierce. ABC Entertainment Chairman Lloyd Braun and President Susan Lyne were horrified. They called it unspeakably exploitative. Eisner fired back, accusing them of acting like elitists. The debate was loud, emotional, and personal. In the end, the pregnancy idea was dropped. After a 2-month pause, the show came back in November 2003. The return episode was a 1-hour special called Goodbye. It was a tribute to Ritter's character, Paul Hennessy. The show didn't use a live audience anymore. It was filmed quietly to match the serious mood. To keep the series going, they brought in veteran actors James Garner and Suzanne Pleshette as Kate's parents. David Spade joined too, playing Kate's nephew. These changes helped the show run for 2 more seasons. But without Ritter, it was never the same. ABC's response to his death became a major example of how networks handle sudden tragedies, where business and grief collide. A year after his death, on September 3, 2004, John Ritter's wife, Amy Yazbek, and his 4 children filed a massive lawsuit. They demanded $67 million from 2 doctors, cardiologist Joseph Lee and radiologist Matthew Luttish. The number came from Ritter's expected future earnings from 8 simple rules and other acting work he would have done. In court, their lawyer Moses Lebovitz didn't hold back. He said this was clearly a case of malpractice. Lebovitz argued that Dr. Lee made several critical mistakes the night Ritter arrived at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center. He said Lee didn't get a proper medical history, didn't order a chest x-ray, and used the wrong treatment, a balloon pump that only made things worse. According to the family, Ritter was first misdiagnosed with a heart attack. Then the doctors thought it was pericardial tamponade. But the real issue was a large ascending aortic aneurysm with severe dissection. Before this lawsuit even reached trial, the family had already received over $14 million in settlements from 9 other medical groups. One of those was a $9.4 million settlement from the same hospital where Ritter died. But Amy Yazbek didn't stop at legal battles. Just 1 month after losing her husband, she launched the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health in October 2003. She wanted to make sure no other family would go through what hers had. The mission was simple but urgent: to prevent deaths from aortic dissection through education, research, and awareness. Over the years, the foundation has grown. Since 2010, it's helped fund the John Ritter Research Program in Houston, led by Dr. Deanna Milewich. By 2023, more than 1,500 families had joined the program. The data they provided has been crucial. It's helped doctors learn more about symptoms, risk factors, and better ways to treat the condition. The foundation also created something called the Ritter Rules. These are simple, life-saving tips to help people recognize and act fast when someone is showing signs of aortic dissection. Even in 2025, more than 20 years later, Amy Yazbek hasn't slowed down. On the Foundation's website, she wrote, "Since losing John, I've devoted myself to shining a much-needed light on thoracic aortic disease." Her fight continues, not just in Ritter's memory, but to save lives.